Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf the Podcast, a serial killer drama.
Hello! We're celebrating here at the moment because this is episode 200. What we've done is we've actually videoed ourselves playing the roles. So you'll get me and Greg on video if you go to the YouTube channel. There's a link in the description below, just down there in the description. It'll take you straight to the episode where you can watch us play our favourite characters. We've chosen 3 parts of 3 particular episodes that we like the most. So we had some fun doing this and we had a bit of a laugh and it was good. So some mistakes were made, but such is life. So if you want to go and watch us, then you can do that on the YouTube channel. Other than that, just keep listening for the audio. And thank you for letting us make 200 episodes of this thing. It's brilliant. And thanks for the support. And thanks to GrendelPress.com because they're helping us out. So, yeah, enjoy. Hello, welcome to Werewolf the Podcast, episode 200. We have got there somehow. Yeah, we don't really know how we got there, but thank you to all you lunatics out there that support the show. We're going to do something special today. We've chosen 3 episodes that we really like, and we're going to try and do them live. And I've got to tell you that we do an awful lot of editing normally. So this is going to be very interesting. So what we did was we chose the hardest possible episode first, because how many voices have you got to do, Greg?
It's just shy of 200. No, it's not.
Well, voices. You're not doing 200 voices, are you?
I mean, when I say just shy of 200, I mean it's 3.
Yeah. Close.
So
Close.
It is close on some scale or another.
Yeah. If I've not introduced ourselves in the past, we've not introduced ourselves properly for 200 episodes. I'm Fenrir Thorvaldsson. I am a writer and voice actor on this thing, and Gregory Alexander Sharp, who is a voice actor and a writer on the show too. So it's going to be an interesting time. Episode 169, I think it is, that we're going to first, which is, what was it? The Count has to pay his debt or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. And we've got some of our favourite characters that are going to play off each other in this. We have William Marshall, obviously the greatest knight that ever lived, who is the werewolf. We have Gervais, his right-hand side drunken friend, and then we've got Percy and Welly. Welly is his squire, and Percy is his slightly mad, effeminate friend who seems to get renowned for doing everything but not actually doing anything. And Greg you have William Marshall, and who else do you have?
I have the Count de Leon, Count de... the Count of what's it called?
Yeah, the Count of what's it called?
Yeah.
I can't remember what the Count of. He's a Count of a proper actual player.
Where's he from?
So
Remind me where the Count's from.
I can't remember. That's really
Quick,
bad.
Prompt. Where's the Count from?
The reason why I chose it was because the castle that I chose is right next to a huge cave complex in France.
The Count du Périgord. I had to do it in my head in his accent, and then it came back to me.
And we have to thank Monty Python for inspiring the over-the-top French accents as well, and also Dee, who is Greg's partner, who really got us into doing over-the-top accents.
Yes.
Yeah, because she reminded of us Allo Allo from a time before you people were probably here.
Yes.
It's a TV series. But anyway, so we're going to go for this, and we apologise now because we're going to mess it up. And also, both me and Greg, as writers, are dyslexic, so we might not read things correctly as we go along. And we've discovered this from doing this stuff before. So you're going to have to wish us some luck.
Yes.
So are you ready? I'm not ready for this at all. Let me have a drink of gin. Okay, I'll be a moment.
Mead. Let me have a slug of mead.
Mead, yes, mead. Okay. Right, so episode 169, let us start with the narrator and we'll just see if it works.
The team of 4 have fought and killed the dragon, and they are back in the court of the Count for their reward, which the Count refuses to give.
I raise my cup to the Count,
said Gervais. A cheer from the crowd.
I also remind him that he made a promise.
He lifted the wine to his mouth and drank it all down before continuing with his monologue.
So, when we decide to leave...
He paused at this, meeting the Count's eyes.
When we decide to leave, we will expect that fleece to be loaded up on a wagon, ready for transportation. That is what a just and noble lord would do. They would be grateful for the life of their brat.
He spat the word brat.
Grateful enough to give us what he promised.
He smiled and raised his cup to the audience. A confused audience that did not know how to respond. The way he'd raised his drink would infer that they should cheer. But what he'd actually said meant maybe they should not. They murmured. Gervais held his pose, waiting for the Count's response. I think not, brave Sir Ned. You will not be taking my fleece. It is a man, and man it will remain. You could try to become the brigand and take it, but I think the men of my coat would soon make you wise to the attempt.
Brilliant.
The Count said. Gervais bowed dramatically to the Count and his retinue, who now stood by him. They had hands on weapons. The knight in yellow sat back in his seat, smiling and eating a chicken leg. He seemed to be enjoying the evening's entertainment.
I apologize then, my lord,
said Gervais.
In this case, I will have to hand it over to William to show you the error of your ways. I did try to help you, but now I sit back and will enjoy watching the floor show.
He then turned to me, and with a flourish, he invited me to take the floor.
Please try to be kind, William,
he shouted across the room. I stood and bowed to the crowd. Again they were in confusion, as this was not how it was supposed to go. So, Count, you renege on your offer? I asked. I do, sir, he said from his sitting position. He didn't even do me the decency of standing to address me. I do, sir, and there is nothing you or yours can do about it. He smiled, and the 20 or so knights that sat with him oozed confidence. They should have. There would be 3 against them. Unfair odds in their eyes, but unfair in their favour. Maybe it was unfair of me not to include our 4th man. 3.5 against 20 or so, including Welly. I feigned being flustered. I acted showing fear. Fine, then I accept the terms. The Count and his men laughed. The crowd cheered. They relaxed. But I was waiting for them to quiet. I sat down in my seat as though beaten, humbled and at a loss. I could not meet any of their eyes that stared at mine around the room. It was a good act. After a few moments, at the point that everyone understood that I had lost this verbal joust, I laughed and lifted my feet, settling them on the table. Now, I oozed confidence. A price was agreed, my lord, and I shall not leave here without that which was promised. The court was now completely silent, and intent on my words. "A fleece of gold, I believe, was the bargain, was it not? Now, if you will not give that, then I will have no option but to take." I gave this as a threat relatively quietly whilst considering a haunch of venison before biting into it and looking at the Count. I considered the flesh in my mouth, the flesh of the Count, as I tore it from the bone. The Count leapt to his feet at the table, scattering items hither and thither. "There is no flesh for you, you idiot!" The Count was angry at my flippant manner. Fenrir was laughing in my head. He more than any loved when this mood took me. It was infrequent, but I could not allow injustice, and he knew that however far I was pushed, I would always push back harder. Now, the Count goes on threatening. Then he brings Bruce de la Ley to fight William, to our compatriots' amusement.
I just have to say, that was brilliant, mate. That was.
Well, thank you.
I'm so shocked we've not messed up.
I know.
Anyway, back into character. William?
Gervais. Oh, we've frozen.
Oh,
I've frozen.
Oh, shit, you're gone.
Okay, I'll be
It's
back
all right.
in a second.
We'll wait for him to come back. Right. There we are. We're back again. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I've got you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, well, I've got a very bad Wi-Fi thing because I live in Scotland somewhere, so you know. Right, wait. Right, so we're back into we're back at Gervais, and Bruce DeLay is being introduced. Bruce Lee, fantastic. He's got the yellow outfit. Never mind. I'll just like the writing. William,
Gervais called. I turned to him in my seat and smiled.
"Ha ha! William, the jester speaks!"
He laughed, pointing to the now fuming knight.
"A limerick, my good man! A dirty limerick would be most welcome."
He continued. "I am no jester," yelled the angry man.
"Oh, he is correct, William,"
added Percy as he looked at his zither and strummed a few notes.
"He certainly is no jester, although his outfit is certainly that of a mummer of the court,"
he added. A few laughs were given by the assembled people, which made the Yellow Knight livid. His gaze swept the room. Wherever it landed, silence reigned. And this is why I loved my fellows. They knew exactly the right buttons to push to make this man reckless and stupid. Even Welly chimed in.
"He ain't got nothing on old Mama Peasbod, has he? He can make me laugh just by that walk of his. Do you think this one will have a funny walk? I do love a funny walk."
"I am not a jester, nor a mummer," interrupted the knight. He drew 2 swords from his belt. The first was a hand and a half that he held in his right. The second was a short sword that he had in his left. He was a student of Montclavier, a great swordsman who in duel and single combat used these weapons himself. It's a difficult combination for the battlefield, but it's almost impossible to defend against in single combat. They continue to take the piss somewhat.
I think in American terms, because I know we have a huge American audience. What's the equivalent of take the piss in America?
Well, just have fun at their expense. Ridicule them.
Ridicule them. That sounds dead posh, that, doesn't it? Ridicule. Yeah. Okay. So right, I'm gonna start to ridicule them. Where am we? Okay, Percy. I love Percy. "Oh, bravo!
Percy said with much gusto, doing a great impression of someone impressed by what he saw. In fact, he may well have been actually impressed knowing Percy.
William! Gervais!
Percy called on us.
Did you see that? Truly inspiring. Oh, bloody hell, I've got no coppers on me. Could you lend me some pay for our entertainment?
He inquired. You mock me, sir? The Yellow Knight yelled at Percy.
Oh, no, not in the slightest. That spinny roundy stuff was wonderful. I do only have silver in my purse, though,
he replied, offering the knight the chance to look into his money bag. Gervais, Welly, Fenrir, and I were all now laughing at Percy's ability to play the dull-witted fool. The knight thought that we were laughing at him, which was, to be truthful, somewhat correct. I challenge you to single combat, sir. He now shouted at Percy. Percy looked at him, aggrieved.
For what? I just paid you a compliment.
He took his eyes from him in a dismissive way.
Ah, I refuse to fight someone as lowly as you, sir,
he replied, returning to his zither with interest. The poor knight did not know how to respond. He just stood with his mouth open. That was not how a response to such a request should go. How would he respond in turn? He started to open his mouth and direct his low-witted Percy when Gervais butted in.
I tell you what, I will fight you,
he said, wobbling on his feet, obviously acting drunk.
I can see both of you and know that I can take you in your pretty outfits.
He drew his sword, which landed on the ground at his feet as he tottered for a moment, trying to reach for it. As he managed to grasp the blade after a few attempts, he turned and banged his head on the corner of the table.
Ow!
He hollered, then giggled as he stood upright, rubbing his jaw and swaying a little. He hiccuped and smiled as he slipped back and fell on his bench seat, flailing onto the floor with a thump, and started to laugh hysterically as his sword slid under the table.
Oopsie!
He yelled in between his bursts of laughter. I will not fight this drunken fool. He is not worthy of my combat. The Yellow Knight said nobly. From his prone position, Gervais responded.
Who are you calling a drunken idiot?
He paused.
No, no, I take that back. Who are you calling an idiot?
He yelled out, now lost in laughter again at his own wit. Bruce Delalay turned to me. Will you have the guts and the gizzard to fight me? He asked, pointing his short sword at me. I saw the Count smirk. This is exactly what he wanted. I stood up and finished my ale, placing the cup on the table dramatically, and then belched.
Nice.
Yep.
That went really well.
I mean, the great thing is that the audience can't see the script, so they've got no idea how freestyle that had to be.
Yeah, that was really cool, though. Those characters really came to life, didn't they? That was pretty impressive.
Do you know, one of my favourite lines that we've written since working together is, "A dirty limerick, my good man." That really, really cracked me up. When I saw that line for the first time when you sent it over, I was somewhat gutted that I wasn't going to get to deliver that one myself, because it's just so funny.
I do love the way that the like four of them get together to rip the piss out of the Count. That just takes me great. And like, if you haven't listened to that episode, I don't re-listen to my episodes very often, or our episodes, because to be honest, Greg was mostly the voice in that. But like, that is a fantastic episode, and I really, really love it. And it was so nice to actually do it. That was so much fun doing it actually across from me instead of just doing it in bits, wasn't it? Because we could actually interact off each other.
Yeah. There's a different energy doing it that way, isn't there? And a flow to it.
Yeah, no, that was really cool. And we didn't really make any mistakes apart from the fact that I kind of lost it laughing at certain parts.
Yeah, and I nearly choked on my deep William Marshall voice at one point, but I'm sure nobody noticed.
It makes it more real,
Yeah,
in scene and all that
absolutely.
kind of stuff. Yeah. The next piece we're going to do is, I think this is, I'll let Greg explain this one, because this was the one that you rose about the Valkavian, wasn't it? It's D-Day of the Vamps, episode 151.
Yeah.
So would you like to tell us why this sort of resides in your head?
Yeah. I sometimes think, and I reckon some of our audience this might resonate with some people. I sometimes think you have a little chuckle to yourself when you're writing some of these episodes, because you think, is the bastard going to be able to get his gums around this one? When you come up with... So it's true
I've been doing that recently. I've been throwing Latin in there, like, go on, good luck.
And Dee has said the same thing with some of the lines you've written for Lucy as well. She's like, is he winding me up with this? And I'm like, yeah, he probably is. And when I saw the name of this Valkavian for the first time, I thought to myself, I'm never going to be able to say that. And so I must have said it 100 times. And then I remember recording the episode where this creature introduces themselves, and I'll come back to the context in a moment. I remember sending you a clip of it that night, and you came back and said that you and Yvonne were sort of howling with laughter. And
we did. It was brilliant. Honestly, if anyone could have said it any better, I don't think. I mean, you could have had Thomas Hardy, you could have had whoever it was. No, that was brilliant. The reason why I made it so long and so sort of intricate was because I just thought it was just the right length for someone who is really up their own ass to say, and then to just take the piss out of him being completely up his own ass. I thought that would be fantastic.
And when that's coming from Gregory Alexander Sharp and Fenrir Thorvaldsen, you know, it's about 100 syllables between us, you know.
But we don't really take ourselves seriously, so how can we take the Valkavian seriously?
So the episode, for those that are not that familiar with it, 151 D-Day of the Vamps, this is in the middle of the series that we did where there is a real revenge theme with the Queen of the Vampires and Will the Werewolf, and it's the story in which the Professor gets introduced, and there is this sequence, a number of episodes which are dedicated to Will and the Professor basically going and kicking ass and taking out the army, the vampire army, and some of them are different sizes and shapes to others. And this particular chap's a bit of a beast. But he does
He's a lion-headed giant, isn't he?
Yeah, a bit of a lump.
But what I love about the Professor in this particular one is that the Professor is this renowned hero. He's been this knight and everything like that. But his resort to what he's going to do at this one is run the fuck away and get in a car.
You know, they say as a writer, they say one of the most fulfilling things is when you've backed your characters into a corner. And even you're thinking, how the hell are they going to get out of this one? And then you come up with it. And the way that Simon takes out this particular character was so imaginative. It was absolutely hysterically funny. We haven't got that sequence in here, but I do encourage you to go and listen to the episode, because it's very creative and very, very fun. A lot of fun.
It did lead to my favourite moment ever in probably all the episodes, the Kittens of Doom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, yes, but we'll leave it there and we'll let you listen to this. Now, I yet again, I seem to have chosen something that is a lot of you, so I do apologise. But It's very short, so I will leave this to... You're going to have no voice by
No,
now.
and hay fever season's just arrived in the Sharp household as well. So we'll see how well I manage to hold it together. We'll have a go.
Right. Well, I do apologise if I laugh at certain parts of this, but I will endeavour to try and keep quiet.
I apologise if I don't make it all the way through his name without laughing, but I have done it about 100 times, so hopefully we should be good to go. All right, introduction of the Valkalavian, episode 151, D-Day of the Vamps. Ahem. Do you know, sorry. I so nearly went into William Marshall then.
Really?
I was just about to deliver the next line as William came from behind
I don't blame you. I'm a bit
Came from
lost.
behind me. Yes, Simon. Back to Simon. Yes, Simon the Professor. Okay. Ahem. Came from behind me. It was a very unexpected ahem. I mean, it was incredibly polite, as if the ahemmer was a little embarrassed at disturbing my day, but needed my interest. He was just a really massive, muscular bloke with a lion's head and its paws. I am Gidjovoston around the kinful Tony and Brusk. You would know me as the Vulcan, the Blood Lord, or the Valkalavian.
Hooray! He's
It
the
boomed.
Valkalavian.
Oh, good. This was one of those things that was so powerful it had to tell you how powerful it was before it hurt you. Sorry, what was the name again, old chap? I asked him. There's so much bloody noise going on here, and my lugholes just aren't what they were. I am Gidjovoston around the kinful Tony and Brusk. You would know me as the Vulcan Blood Lord, or the Valkalavian, he repeated, taking on a prideful, practiced pose once more. He waited for me to quail and fall in fear. Oh, I know you. Then I looked confused again. No, I think that was Giglion Voston. Tell me, is he your brother?
I love that. I love the professor's sort of way he looks on life. It's absolutely fantastic. It's just he just doesn't give a shit.
He doesn't. Actually, a little further into that interaction, as I recall, he says to the Vulcan, isn't he your brother? Only I think he was a little better looking than you and a bit taller.
Yeah. And then he tells him about the fact that they had a drinking competition and that his brother was weak as piss.
Oh, dear.
I sometimes sit there and wonder where these stories come from. It's kind of like, why did I decide that you and his brother had a drinking competition at some point, you know?
Because it's the sort of thing that you would have said under the same circumstances.
Probably, yeah. No, that was brilliant. I love the Valkyrie. Him.
Gidjeo Voston.
Yeah. But I promise I'll try and not make any more complicated names up. You know, what did I send you the other week? It was Vaunt. I got a new character, Vaunt, the werecat.
Yes.
And I was quite interested to see how you were going to say that, but you did say it exactly as I sent it because I spelled it Vaughnt.
You did. And I've looked at that and I'm like, what's that supposed to do?
I think the thing that you don't realise is that however you say it is just how I accept it.
Well, I looked at it on the page and I thought, well, it looks a bit like Johnny Vaughan's surname, but with a T on the end. So I went, Vaughan.
Yeah. I think she's quite a cool character. I think she's going to be quite
She's
cool.
got potential.
I've also kind of fallen in love with this little goblin character, Gupsy, which is a bit dangerous. Yeah, he just seems a great character, so I can't wait to write more about him. If you're ever thinking about writing your own book or doing a podcast or anything like that, to the people out there, please do it. Have fun, yeah, because it's just something you should definitely do. Anyway, we're going to change tack now because we're going to look at the next one, which is episode 149, and I will get the name of it correct because I've been sending it to Greg all week wrong. A Werewolf Feels Grief. And this particular episode I listened to today, and it was really moving. And we don't normally do moving, do we? We normally do comedy horror.
Horror. We normally do horror-y.
Horror, yeah, whatever. So, in this particular episode, it does star a lot of the Professor, but it's the first time that Will, the anti-villain, the werewolf, that we get his point of view and his soul actually start to feel something, because up to now he's never really felt emotion, guilt, or anything like that. So this was a huge turning point for us, and I think it changes the character of Will in a massive way. So is there anything you'd like to add, Greg?
Yeah, I think this might be the number one downloaded episode of all 200, right? And maybe it's no coincidence that the sort of introduction of pathos here, and I'll just say, anyone who's listened to that episode, Fen basically crying his eyes out for a good portion of it, whether that's in the foreground or in the background in certain scenes, and it was quite exhausting, actually, I think, to record that episode. It really did. When you hear actors talking about, God, it was exhausting doing that role because there was so much pathos, and you think, bloody hell, you're just pretending to do stuff, right? But you kind of got an insight into it doing that episode, because it really did draw an awful lot of emotion out of you. When I heard the edited version of it, when you sent it to me before it got published, I thought, wow, that really did sort of hit you in the heart, didn't it?
Yeah, it was. I think it was an incredible moment, because I think when we wrote it and I remember us discussing it, and it was really difficult for me to do because it was a complete change of direction for the character. And looking back on it now, I think it was an incredibly important moment for him to go through, because I think it's going to change the mentality of where we go with the podcast as well. So, it was a difficult thing to do, but as you will see, it is an incredible thing, and I'll try and cry. And I'll try and cry. And as Greg said, I remember finishing this podcast and not smiling at the end of it. I felt something was different, and it was a bit weird. And then I remember you telling me that you felt pretty much the same. It was like, that was actually
moved.
It wasn't easy. It was hard. It was actually hard to do. So anyway, yet again, I've given Greg most of the wordage. You do have a better voice for this than me, though. So,
Well, I'm better at being the Professor because I'm him.
You are the Professor. Yeah.
You're better at
for those who don't know, we made the Professor up, and then we turned out it was a real person, and then Greg became that real person. So
I kind of turned into
that was magic. Yeah, but what I'll do is I'll hand over to Greg.
All right. Okay. Into character. I moved from the reception room into the bedroom. It was dark, but there was something in here. The furthest corner of the room was dark. Too dark. It was so dark that something unnatural had to be there. It was the werewolf. He was curled in a ball facing the corner of the room, like a naughty child sent to sit and think about what he'd done. The noise that it made was distress and sadness. This seemed utterly wrong. I had never heard a beast sound like this before, but the noise it made
was sheer sadness. I found it utterly heartrending in its lamentation. The hairs rose on the back of my neck. "Will!" I called. I didn't know if I should really be intruding in this moment, but I needed to know what had happened. "Will!" The beast snarled in response, so I took a moment and wiped my now sweaty palm on my underpants. This was only going to go two ways, and although I could not die, it didn't mean I enjoyed being killed. Can you imagine taking life-ending injuries, feeling the untender tearing, the ripping and destruction of your own body every time? It's not my thing. Other fellows may enjoy that kind of treatment, but not me. The wolf shook as it emoted. It was breaking its heart as it lay there on the floor. I felt waves of hurt flood from him, and it was horrifying to feel. I made my way to the prone figure. He'd somehow wedged himself between the bed and the far corner of the room, looking for a safe place to hide from the world. I stood over him for a moment, unsure how I felt about this situation and the man himself. He was a horrendous being, was speculatively pure evil. And yet, then, my heart went to him. What had happened? I can feel it, you know. I mean, I've been an utter bastard in the past, but I'm remedying that, and part of that process is dealing with the things I've done and the pain it creates. "Will," I said, tentatively. Was I doing the right thing? The claw lashed out and I was stood at the door of the bedroom once more. He was still capable of killing me then. After being reborn or whatever, there are a few moments of discombobulation before things slip back into the correct order. I wandered back over to the deflated werewolf, this time keeping a distance that I thought would be safe enough to prevent me from being killed again. "Will, it's your friend, Simon. What on earth is wrong, old chap? Did they give you the bill for last night?" I chortled, trying to use humour, but as soon as it was said, I knew it wasn't appropriate. "Will, please, let me help you if I can." Again, I reached out to touch the lying beast. I was waiting for it. The lash, the bite. But it didn't come. I touched the fur, and it had the consistency of wire wool, and it was matte black in colour. "Will, old pal, what's wrong?" The wolfman was now just the man, and next to him, sitting, watching, was the giant wolf soul, Fen. Will continued to cry quietly in his hands.
"Come with me, Simon,"
said Fen, the wolf soul, as he turned and walked back out to the reception room at the front of the suite. He wandered forlornly to a little pile of things next to a box on a table at the centre of the room.
See that? That was delivered here this morning. Take a look,
said Fen as he sat to watch my reaction. I was obviously confused, but I quickly looked at the items he pointed to. There appeared to be a few scraps of fur and a pair of old, warped, wire-rimmed glasses.
No, Simon, pick 'em up. Take a proper close look. It'll make more sense, I tell you,
said the wolf.
Will and I weren't ready for this,
he told me. I picked up the glasses and examined them. They'd seen a hard life and once been either gold or brass-plated.
See them? They were Malcolm's glasses, Simon. You know, Malcolm, you remember? He worked for us at home. He were taken by vampires.
I nodded in recognition of what he was saying, placing them down with a bit of reverence. I then lifted the scraps of fur. It was a cured, tiny pelt, about a foot long. You could see the shape of the creature it was taken from. Tail, 4 legs. But it was so little. I lifted it to my face to feel its texture on my cheek. All the years of hunting had taught me to recognize most pelts, but this was no rabbit or hare. It was something I recognized. But it couldn't be. Not...
It's wolf,
said Fen, anger in his internal voice. Confused, I turned to the soul, dropping the pelt away from my face to examine it closer. It's far too small for... Oh, God. My heart sank as I held the tiny wolf pelt. Oh, God, I repeated as I looked at the tiny scrap and then to the sky.
Bravo. That went really well as well, didn't it? Woof, that was a bit.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's hardcore.
Yeah, that is pretty hardcore because the conception is that Will has lost his 3 new children that he didn't really know about or care about until that point. So, yeah, it was pretty harsh. Well acted, sir.
Well, I thank you. And, yeah, I mean, that's... Just listening to you do that side of it again, that's not easy to do at all. That's pretty difficult to do.
Yeah, I mean we don't hit pathos very often in our stuff, but when it hits hard, doesn't it? Really,
it feels that way, yeah. And actually, this episode is such an important episode for that story in so many ways. It's pivotal in terms of the plot that we followed because there are several plot twists in that storyline which have their roots in this episode.
Definitely, yeah. I remember writing this episode, and then we had to completely rethink what direction we were going to take, because although we had an idea of where it was going to go, it just kind of changed everything from the point of view of the characters, because up to this point the professor had never really liked the werewolf, and he was always going to get rid of the werewolf, and then this had caused him to if and about whether the character was as evil and horrible as he really was.
Yeah, it's the first whiff of humanity about Will and Fen, isn't it?
Yeah, and even Fen as a character at this point, who is not the nicest of things on the planet. He doesn't really like humans. But I think at this point, even Fen is changed a little bit by this.
Yeah.
You know. So no, it's brilliant, and brilliantly played, by the way. That was fantastic.
Oh well, thank you.
All I did was cry through it. Something I'm quite practiced at after a few gin. We've got the final episode, which is to this day I listened to it yesterday when Simon and the werewolf meet.
It's a great scene.
Yeah, because Simon is just so self-confident in this moment. He doesn't even have a thought about what he's doing. He's just, I'm going to go and talk to this guy, and it don't really matter what he does.
Yeah, because you can't kill me.
No. And I really like the fact. I mean, I won't give too much away, but I really like the fact that Will slowly gets annoyed because he can't kill him.
Yeah.
He's like, shit, I have to listen to you because I can't do anything else.
But, it was again a really important scene for a number of different things in the plot as well, because there's an act of revenge that Samarat has taken on Will here in destroying all the material things that she knows this materialistic entity holds so dear, and she's set them all on fire, and he's a combination of distraught and broken-hearted.
Yeah. I mean, this is the first time the werewolf has been heartbroken, but it's something you'd expect him to be heartbroken of because he's such a materialistic, utterly capitalist bastard that you kind of like, oh, I understand why he's hurt with this. All these cars go up in flames, or everything goes up in flames, and in this case, the vampire queen has done the perfect thing to piss him off.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite good. So it's not as anywhere near as when I did this scene, it was kind of like him being his most deep and grieving self. But compared to the last what we just did, it's not in comparison. But it is such a turning point when Simon and Will meet because we instantly. What I love about this is within a few sentences, we instantly learn what and who the professor is. Yeah. And he's become such a highlight of the characters that I have. I mean, Greg plays him absolutely fantastic. We write him together. I mean, he's more Greg's character now than ever he was mine, because Greg has shaped him. So I write him. It's like Lucifer for D. Has shaped that character. Telling me this is how she's going to behave. This is what should happen. She shouldn't have parts of this. And you've done the same with the professor. It's like, well, he wouldn't do that. Yeah. And I go, no, I wouldn't. Sorry. And I love that like you have it's like with Yvonne and Sally. She's like, no, Sally won't do that. She's not that stupid. And I go, okay. So I do like.
I'll just say while we're on the subject of Yvonne playing Sally, another one of my favourite lines ever is there's an episode in the same series in which Sally has, I think she scooped Will up from the side of the road after he's been duffed up by the Nixies, and they're driving along in the VW camper van, and there's somebody behind him toots the horn or something, and she just yells, "Arsehole!"
Yeah, she just gives him a load of verbal from the car.
Brilliant.
And I'll give you the reason for that is because it had happened the Thursday afternoon before I wrote it, and that was Yvonne's character to a T. This little tiny lady who Yvonne is, I mean, she's 5'0", tiny, and someone had gone past in I think it was an Audi A something, and she just lost her temper at him, and I went, this has got to be in this week's episode. Yeah, I was like, oh my God, you're terrifying. But anyway, we will do this last episode. Yep. We will have a little conclusion, and then, thanks so far for listening if you've got this far. I again will. Do you want me to introduce this one?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so this is episode 100. God, that's a long time ago. 122.
Yeah.
When did we? 105 was the first one.
It was
that we actually did
in the museum. 105. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's when we actually brought Lupo's characters into. Yeah, that was cool. All right. Anyway, shut up, Fen. 122. When the wolf. I can't even read that. When the wolf and the professor meet. Am I being the narrator?
Yeah.
Okay. Then
hello.
Someone had managed to walk right up next to me without either of us noticing. I could put this down to the distress of the situation and not being able to focus on anything else, or I could put it down to, well, there wasn't anything else to put it down to, really. There was no way a human being could get that close without either of us noticing. I sniffed the air and listened. It was a human. It was definitely human, but worryingly, it was very human. My senses gave me the perception of the shadow next to me that my eyes could not register yet, and that shadow was, how do you say it, extra human? Everything about it was perfect. Humans are never perfect. I could sense no inflammation in his body or stress. There were no bad smells even from anywhere, no body odour or bad breath, not even a pervasive smell of perspiration or the soap that would tackle it. I turned to look at the man to remember his face before I tore it off. He'd given me my first fun bit of kill fury tonight, but when I looked at him, I paused. Something was off. "Hold up, Will," said Fen. I stood slowly as the man turned towards me. He was older, maybe early 50s. He had a barber jacket on and a flat cap, but not like a farmer's flat cap, a cool flat cap. He looked like, I don't know, like a lord of the land. It was bizarre because he said nothing more. He just stood looking at the flames with his hands in his pockets. I was trying not to do awful things, and Fen had told me to hold up. Fen was the only reason I would hold up, but that would only be as long as my patience held. The man unzipped his jacket and slipped his hand into the interior and pulled a hip flask from its lining. He looked at the container as he unscrewed the lid, flipping it open and taking a long swig of the liquid inside before sighing at the enjoyment of its contents. He turned to me and proffered the flask with a smile. I smelt the liquid within and sensed its alcoholic bite. He nodded at the flask, and offered it to me again.
It's a
Macallan 18-year-old malt, last year's release and from sherry oak barrels, I told him. He nodded with one of those strange smiles that people do when they're impressed with someone's knowledge.
It certainly is. And it's extremely palatable and would seem to be something that would be a good libation for this opportune moment we're having.
I reached and gently took the flask from his hand. I sniffed the vessel's open neck, closing my eyes and losing myself in the smell of that most excellent of Speyside malts. The man was watching me as I opened my eyes. I held those eyes for a moment before raising the whiskey to salute him and taking a small drink that I ran around my mouth with my eyes closed to savour it fully before swallowing. I dropped my head to the floor. "That is exceptional," I said. "Thank you." I paused for the man to fill the gap with his name.
I feel like I already know you, Will,
he said. In most cases, this would have led to suspicion. I don't really do paranoia, but I'm particularly good at suspicion. I don't mind people or things out to get me as long as I know. I nodded and I shrugged.
My name is Simon de Montfort,
he announced.
Does that name ring any bells with you by any chance?
He asked. I again shrugged as I looked at him. Not really in this century, no, I said. In history, yes, father of British democracy, took the power from the hands of the monarchy and gave it to the people. Sort of. How's that working out for you, Simon? I asked. He took another sip from the flask, smiled, and looked at the fires, and nodded my head towards the fire.
Not the worst thing I did back then, to be honest, but it all seemed like a good idea at the time.
The man looked away to the failing fires on the opposite shore and took another contemplative swig from his now half-empty flask.
But that has little relevance to this conversation, I think. I'm a liaison to the...
I butted in. I don't give a fuck
who you are, where you're from, what you do, or even what you might be. You have just met me at the worst fucking time that you possibly could. I am very upset at what has happened. I dropped my head as my voice actually broke with emotion for a moment. I paused, pointing at the far bank to try and get his focus off me. And I am about to commit horrendous amounts of violence on the everything I can to make myself feel better. So you obviously know who I am, and you obviously have a point. Can we get to the fucking point before I choose what I'm going to do to you? Remember, the longer you take to think and talk, the longer I have to use my imagination to invent a torture. Or 3, I don't have a lot of patience right now. The man briefly paused and met my eyes with his. He was not uncomfortable with the threat. He was uncomfortable because I was actually rushing him.
Yes, well, Will,
he said, turning and pointing to the now smoking ruins.
I know who did that. I know where they are. And I know how you can hurt them.
He said, turning towards me and smiling.
Succinct enough for you?
That's perfect. I laughed as the hoses extinguished the final flame. Only smoke rose from what was my home. Okay, I'm now interested in what you have to say. Tell me more. Fantastic! Hooray!
Well done, mate. That was brilliant.
That was the start of the Simon and Fenrir relationship. And William, sorry.
That's classic Will. That was such a great monologue by Will there, and it was so atmospheric. You could almost sense the damp, sticky cobbles by the side of the canal there, and see the flickering reflection of the flames on the water, and you could just sense it all and feel the anger and the anguish and the rage that was building up inside him. And it's like, I am going to rip this town to pieces tonight.
Yeah. You know? I one of my favorite images that I imagined from that was the moment before Simon turns up and Will is sat swinging his heel. He's actually sat on the side of the canal with his heels swinging over the water. So he's just off the top of water. But Fen, the werewolf soul, is actually protecting him from the world. So he's actually sat behind him and wrapped around him to protect him. And I thought that's such a nice imagery that this soul, this other character is actually protecting him. Yeah. But how Simon got there without them noticing, I haven't got a clue.
Yeah. Well, he's a smart cookie, isn't he? You know.
He is a bit of a smart cookie. He's been around for a while, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's been around the block a few times. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed that. That was absolutely fantastic. Thank you for your time, Greg. And
thank you as always.
That was good. Yeah. We'd also like to talk about Grendel Press just a little bit. They are the number one for horror genre publishing in America. So we're in partnership with them, and at the moment, you're getting your book edited and looked at.
Yes.
So would you like to fill
the second novel, Kill and Cure, is getting the Grendel Press magic. A good story is becoming a great product. Hopefully, that's the plan.
Yeah, and I don't blow smoke up Greg's ass at this point. He's a fucking fantastic writer. So when you get a chance, go and read his work. His first book, Lupo, is one of the nicest bits of descriptive writing that I've had. And his second book is a mix of that and all action. So go for it. We'd like to thank Suzanne and all those others at Grendel Press. They work very hard. I mean, they work really hard. I was out putting mealworms out for the robin the other day while she'd been up for 16 hours or something crazy. Yeah. So, yeah. But we'd just like to mention Grendel Press. GrendelPress.com. Go and check their books out. I've read 3 so far. Fantastic written works, fantastic authors. And they
they sort of coincide with our look at the horror genre, don't they?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really, really good. Not too gory, it's just perfectly balanced. It's really, really good. Okay, so I'll hand over to Greg. Is there anything you would like to say before we close this thing? We're nearly at an hour.
Well, just to say, thank you for having me. But I mean,
honestly, this wouldn't be the same without you and Dee. Honestly, thank you so much for helping me out.
But we've spoken about it before, how we started collaborating on this. But you'd done over 100 episodes off your own bat before that, and that's so much content and so much writing. And I'm going to say, I'm not sure there's anybody else in the world is as prolific a writer as you. I mean, you've written so many books since we've known each other. It's been completely nuts. It's so impressive, but it's very, very generous of you to allow me to bring, my ideas and thoughts and to bounce them off you, and for us to work on some of these things as closely together as we have. And it's real fun, a real thrill, and a lot of fun. So thanks.
I think we have such a similar mindset. I mean, when we go back and talk about what we've been through in life and stuff, there's a lot of similarities, isn't there? And I think one of the things that I got right from our initial conversation was that we've got the same sense of humor. This ridiculous take on life, and I think that's wonderful. And there's never a time, like, you come up with so many professorisms and little details that you add, like the Mekon that you added to last week. It was just, and people have no relevance for that, what I've just said, but he puts in Easter eggs, guys. You need to go and check those Easter eggs out. Yeah, because I don't think he does them for you. I think he does them for me to make me giggle. Because I'll sit there and listen to it and go, that's brilliant. So yes, thank you for all the hard work. And from both our point of view, thank you so much for listening. We don't really think that we'd have many people listen to this. We're doing it out of complete fun. Keep listening, and thank you very much. And I'll leave the last words to the professor, to Mr. Gregory Alexander Sharp.
Well, thank you so much. We'll see you next week for another episode of Werewolf the Podcast, a serial killer drama.
Fantastic. Thank you and goodbye. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf the Podcast, a serial killer drama.